On March 19, 1997, Marshal Applewhite, the leader of a group called Heaven's Gate, gave a final instruction inside a rented mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California. He told his followers that their bodies were containers, that death was a transfer, and that the Hale-Bopp comet carried a vehicle waiting behind it. That night, 39 adults began preparing for suicide in shifts, following a schedule Applewhite had written weeks earlier. The plan required obedience, silence, and timing. By the time police entered the house, every step had already been completed exactly as instructed. The neighbors in Rancho Santa Fe would later say the house was always quiet, too quiet. No music, no parties, no raised voices, just cars that came and went at strange hours, always neatly parked, always clean. If you passed by at night, the lights inside glowed soft and steady, like a ship drifting without waves. Inside that house, long before the bodies, there was a teacher. His name was Marshal Applewhite, and for most of his life, he wasn't dangerous. He was awkward, soft-spoken, a man who loved music, structure, and rules. He taught voice. Students remembered him as intense but gentle, the kind of instructor who leaned in close, corrected posture, insisted on discipline. Your body, he would say, tapping a sternum, is an instrument. Treat it properly. But beneath the pressed shirts and careful manners, Applewhite carried a quiet fracture. He lived in a time when certain parts of a man had to stay hidden. Desire became guilt. Guilt became obsession. Obsession needed an explanation. And then, in a hospital corridor in Texas, he met a woman who spoke his language. Bonnie Lou Nettles believed in signs, astrology, destiny, the idea that some people weren't meant to stay where they were born. Applewhite told her his birthday. She didn't smile. She studied him. "You're not from here," she said finally. That sentence landed like a bell struck in a hollow room. From that moment on, they were inseparable. He became Dew. She became T. Not nicknames, title, teacher and guide, voice and vision. They began traveling, holding meetings in small rooms and rented halls. The message wasn't wild at first. It was calm, clean, almost comforting. This world is temporary, Dew told small circles of listeners. The body is a vehicle, T added. And vehicles, Dew said, are meant to be exited. People leaned forward. They weren't promised heaven. They were promised escape. No sex, no drugs, no indulgence. Haircut the same, clothes the same. Language corrected. Identity slowly sanded down until everyone sounded like Dew. When someone hesitated, Dew corrected them gently. "You're thinking like a human," he'd say. "We're trying to rise above that." They called it the Heaven's Gate classroom. Students, lessons, tests of obedience. Years passed. Followers came and went. The ones who stayed learned not to question tone, only instructions. Then T died. Cancer, a hospital bed, no spacecraft, no ascent. The room went silent. Someone finally asked what everyone was thinking. "She was supposed to go with us." Dew didn't hesitate. "She did," he said. "She just shed her vehicle first." That answer rewired everything. Death was no longer failure. It was procedure. In the years that followed, Dew's voice hardened. The warmth thinned. The rules multiplied. Human things, sex, family, even names, were treated like contaminants. By the time they settled into the house in Rancho Santa Fe, the group moved like a crew preparing for departure. Identical shoes lined the floor, meals eaten without conversation, eyes forward, waiting. Then Dew gathered them in the living room. "There's a marker in the sky," he said. "A sign timed for us." Someone whispered, "A comet?" Dew nodded. "Not the comet," he corrected. "What follows it?" No one asked him to explain. They trusted the teacher. And outside, high above the quiet house, something bright was already moving closer. By the winter of 1996, the house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a terminal. Every morning followed the same rhythm. Wake, shower, dress, eat, work. No small talk, no lingering. No one said good morning unless instructed. Smiles were considered indulgent. Silence meant progress. Marshal Applewhite watched everything. He no longer spoke like a teacher correcting posture. His voice had flattened, stripped of warmth, tuned for authority. When he addressed the group, he didn't look at faces. He looked through them. "Humans seek comfort," he told them one night, pacing the living room. "Students seek completion. Completion meant readiness. Readiness meant detachment." They stopped calling their bodies mind. The word was replaced with vehicle. Hunger was vehicle maintenance. Fatigue was vehicle resistance. Desire was framed as sabotage, proof the body was trying to stay alive past its usefulness. Applewhite made lists. Who struggled with discipline? Who still used old phrases? Who laughed too easily? Corrections were public. "Why did your vehicle react just now?" he'd ask, after someone smiled. The person would swallow, think, correct themselves. "My vehicle was expressing human behavior. I will monitor it." Approval came as silence. At night, they gathered around a television, watching the same footage again and again. News anchors pointing at the sky, astronomers debating brightness, a comet growing larger, clearer, impossible to ignore. Applewhite leaned forward. "This is not coincidence," he said. "This is timing." Then he told them what followed the comet wasn't debris. It was transport, a craft hidden by design, waiting for those who had proven they were done with Earth. Someone finally asked the question that had been hovering for weeks. "How do we board?" Applewhite didn't answer right away. "When a vehicle reaches the end of its usefulness," he said, "you exit it." The room stayed quiet. No one cried. No one shouted. The silence felt trained, like a class waiting for the next instruction. Preparation intensified. They ordered identical black shirts, matching sweatpants, Nike shoes, brand new, lined in rows like equipment, patches sewn carefully onto sleeves. Away team, not metaphor, function. Meals were reduced, sleep shortened. Anything that made the body feel heavy was treated like dead weight. Applewhite began speaking in shifts. "Some will exit first," he explained, "to prepare the craft. Others will follow." Death had become logistical. They recorded farewell messages on a camcorder, sitting stiffly against a plain background. No tears, no shaking hands. Each message followed the same format. "This is graduation. I am going home." One man stumbled over the words. Applewhite stopped the recording. "Say it like you believe it," he said, not unkindly. The man tried again. Outside the house, the world went on unaware. Neighbors walked dogs. Mail arrived. Cars passed. No sirens. No signs of urgency. Inside, the group marked time by the comet's approach. Applewhite's rules tightened further. No books unless approved. No private thoughts left unspoken. No contact with family unless scripted. Earth, he said, was becoming hostile, full of misinformation, full of forces that wanted to keep them trapped in decaying vehicles. "The longer you hesitate," he warned, "the harder it will be to detach." And yet, doubt flickered. Late at night, one woman whispered to another, "What if we're wrong?" The other didn't answer. She stared at the ceiling, jaw clenched, repeating the lesson in her head until the thought passed. Applewhite sensed hesitation like a temperature change. During one final gathering, he stood at the front of the room, hands folded. "You were chosen," he said. "Not everyone is capable of this. History will misunderstand, but understanding is irrelevant." He looked around the room, finally meeting their eyes. Only completion matters. The comet burned brighter. The date was set. And from that moment on, every hour inside the house was no longer about belief, it was about execution. The last night inside the house in Rancho Santa Fe did not feel frantic. That's what shocked investigators later. There was no panic, no overturned furniture, no struggle. The rooms were clean, the air still, the kind of order you expect before inspection. Marshall Applewhite stood in the living room, black shirt tucked in, shoes already on. His voice was steady, not elevated, not emotional. Like a man reading instructions he had rehearsed until the words no longer belonged to him. "Tonight," he said, "we complete the task." No one asked questions. They had practiced this moment for months, rehearsed language, rehearsed posture, rehearsed acceptance. The human part of them had been disciplined into silence. The first group moved to their rooms. They ate applesauce, took pills, drank quietly. Each lay down carefully, arms positioned, bags placed with precision. Purple cloths were drawn up after the body went still, not rushed, not delayed. Procedure. Those who remained cleaned. They washed dishes, wiped counters, folded blankets. It looked less like a death scene and more like a crew closing down a workspace before departure. Applewhite supervised. "You did well," he told one man who hesitated at the doorway. "Your vehicle served its purpose." The man nodded, eyes glassy, and joined the others. As each group completed their exit, the remaining members covered them gently, stepped over bodies without flinching, and continued preparing the house. There was no hysteria, only the weight of inevitability. By morning, fewer people moved through the rooms. The camcorder sat on a tripod, its red light blinking. One by one, the last members recorded their final messages. Their voices were calm, trained, almost relieved. "This is not an ending," one woman said. "This is a return." Applewhite recorded his message last. He sat upright, hands folded, eyes fixed on the lens. "We are entering the Heaven's Gate away team," he said. "This world is recycled. We are not." When he finished, he did not sigh. He did not pause. He stood, turned off the camera, and walked out of frame. The final room was quiet. When it was done, 39 bodies lay arranged throughout the house. 21 women, 18 men, all dressed the same, shoes tied, faces covered. No signs of violence, no note scribbled in panic, only order, only belief carried to its logical end. Outside, the sky was clear. The comet, Hale-Bopp, burned bright enough to be seen with the naked eye. People stood in their yards across the country, pointing it out to their children, marveling at its beauty. None of them knew what had just happened in that quiet house. It was days later when the call came in. A former member, concerned, calm, directions given. When deputies arrived, they moved room to room in silence, shoes lined by the door, beds neatly made, bodies positioned like they were waiting for something to happen next. One officer later said it felt like interrupting a ceremony that had already concluded. Applewhite's body was found last, not elevated, not separate, just another figure among the rest. The teacher had exited with his students, and that was the final lesson. No UFO arrived, no craft revealed itself, no signal returned, only a house full of stillness and a belief system so tightly sealed that not one person inside felt able to step away at the end. People still ask how it happened, how intelligent adults followed a voice into silence. But the answer was never the comet. It was the slow erosion of self, the discipline, the language, the promise that surrender was advancing.